New plans have surfaced for Busch Gardens Williamsburg's 2025 roller coaster, and it's not what we originally thought it would be.
That kind of seems to be the narrative with this plot of land overall. And the plot of land we're looking at is the area right behind Fest House, which was home to Drachenfire back in the day.
Yeah, so after that ride got taken out, it's been sitting empty for years and years. And going back to 2017, that was when we first learned of these original plans, which were codenamed Project Madrid, which was this idea that you could take one big roller coaster and stretch it across the Rhine River. And then that was eventually deemed to be not feasible, so they split it in two. So we got the first half, that was Pantheon, and then the second half was going to be what we called Drachenspire, which was the 350-foot giga spire. And, well, COVID then happened.
Yeah, so that project ended up falling through, and from what we read in this article, it seems like it was actually a pretty far along project. Like, it wasn't just all talk.
Yeah, like it seemed like they were about to break ground on it, which is just crazy that they were that far along. And
that
then
would imply track already existed.
Yeah, they're just like, nope, we're gonna go a different direction. I mean, at that time, there was a lot of uncertainty in the world, so like
That's
I understand.
That's a huge financial loss, though. How expensive must that be to pay to have all that track manufactured? You still have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Even if you don't
and all the design, all the engineering, you're still paying for all that stuff. And when they decided to go in a different direction, clearly that must have been because they had something different in mind, something better. And shortly after, we saw a height waiver go up for about 220 feet, and there was a lot of speculation about what that could be, and seems like it might have been an RMC Hyper.
Well, here's the thing. It's very well known that the Busch Gardens parks, meaning Williamsburg and Tampa, tend to kind of do things in pairs. And that's going to come into play later, so strap in. Here we go. We have currently SheiKra, Griffin, the two Screamin' Swings at each park, and other SeaWorld parks. We have Tigris, Tempesto. We could keep going on.
Helping guys. Yeah.
Like there's a lot of overlap. Given the success of Iron Gwazi, it was very feasible to assume that that was what was going in that 220-foot height waiver area.
Well, and that ride was so well received.
Exactly.
Like, everyone who stepped off that attraction said that was incredible. And that whole plot of land is destined for a big thrill ride because
it's huge.
It is a lot of space. It's probably the biggest usable plot of land that's left in the park. I mean, there's still land that you can use, but, it's kind of destined for, like, smaller family attractions. And because of where Drachenfire was, you needed a worthy successor. And it's also tucked away, so you need something tall to get people to go back there.
Well, yeah, because it's so far back there. If you don't see something in the sky, you're not going to go back there. Even Drachenfire didn't get the numbers that it, in theory, probably should have, being a huge thrill coaster.
And a 220-foot tall hyper hybrid. Oh, yeah, everyone would be able to see that from, like, all the way back there.
Well, the thing with the Busch Gardens parks, currently, I would say Busch Gardens Williamsburg is still lacking that, holy cow, I have to keep coming back to this park for this attraction.
Yeah,
right.
Pantheon's probably as close as you get.
Yeah, and then, I feel Busch Gardens Tampa had a similar issue, and then they opened up Iron Gwazi. Now that is indisputably the highlight ride of that park. I thought that it was very safe to assume that a ground-up hyper hybrid from RMC at Busch Gardens Williamsburg in that plot of land at 220 feet tall, where everyone can see it from pretty much everywhere in the park, would be a success. So we don't go with the Giga. We don't go with the Giga Spire. We don't go with an RMC. What do you use this massive plot of land for?
A B&M family invert.
Remember when I said that they like to do things in twos? We just got an announcement not that long ago that the 2024 coaster for Busch Gardens Tampa, replacing the old Wild Mouse area, was going to be a family invert from B&M. The first one in the United States, the only ones that exist right now are in China.
I'm fine with that addition.
And you know what? I would be fine with them doing that at Busch Gardens Williamsburg somewhere else in the park. It doesn't make any sense to use your prime real estate for a massive thrill coaster that inevitably will come. Even if it's not coming in 2025, someday they are going to open up another thrill coaster. There's no scenario where they don't. That's what that area, in theory, should have been used for.
And that was their idea. Clearly, they were saving that thing for something special.
And they kept changing their minds because nothing was right.
I know.
And this is it?
Do you think that they would have canceled the Giga Spire if they had known that their end goal would have been a B&M family invert?
I don't know, because for me, I think it's crazy that that even happened, because I don't know what scenario it is the correct financial decision to back out of a project that is that deep, especially when it seems that the SeaWorld parks are all about, like, we got to save some money.
Yeah,
Like,
they're deep in debt, guys.
That is not the optimal move. I don't know. I would love to be a fly on the wall for that conversation of why like we go on that project. At least if an RMC was going to happen, it was not nearly as deep in the project.
But it makes you wonder, what happened? What happened with all of this? Like, I mean, the whole Giga Spire project to begin with was always a weird one. Like, I was okay with them kind of moving past that project because it never really made sense there. An RMC did make a lot of sense, and
it made all of the sense.
I was fully on board with that, but clearly something happened that they said, we don't want to go that direction. I'm wondering what it is. Is it because of like issues with Iron Gwazi? Is it cost? Like, I mean, surely a ground up RMC like this, I mean, you know, the cost of steel is getting pretty expensive. Maybe they realized it was too much money and they said, well, for the same price of one more Iron Gwazi, we can do 2 family B&M inverts.
I obviously don't have evidence to support this, but just a gut feeling that the Busch Gardens SeaWorld parks currently have a very favorable deal for both parties involved with B&M, because we are seeing basically like an entire takeover of B&M on these parks within the company. You have Pipeline, which was a first of its kind in the world. We have Penguin Trek coming to the exact same park, which is the first B&M family coaster in that style. You have Phoenix Rising, and then top it all off with now this coaster, probably coming to Busch Gardens Williamsburg. It seems like they were like, look, we will basically, if you sign a contract to do 5 coasters, we will cut you a deal. Specifically in the Orlando area, it makes sense because that is where IAAPA is held every year. And that is where potential buyers can come and ride several different options. And then within the same company, it's very easy to be like, okay, well, here, we'll fly you out to one of our sister parks to then try this model. And this model is basically a showcasing ground for B&M at this point.
They can spread them around the world.
Yeah, so cutting them a deal on B&M side is genuinely smart because these are some of the most attended parks in the world.
You know
what I mean? But I still don't think this was the right choice for where to put it. There are other spots in the park.
My problem is what I was going back to about location, specifically that guests are not going to know that this ride is here. The only reason that they will know that this ride exists is when you are riding the train, you're going to pass under it. I'm assuming that there's an element that goes over because it does cross the train tracks. So your guests will be able to see it there. And if you put a big enough sign up in front of Fest House, you know, new coaster this way. But it is such a narrow pathway, and it's about 500 feet of walking to get from the corner at Fest House to this plaza. It's currently a special event space. I know we've been back there for like a luncheon, and it feels like a backstage area. So they're gonna have to do a lot to make this feel like part of the park. Like, I think there's only a couple scenarios where this works. Number one, if they're able to widen that path. I know currently you have the bumper cars on one side and Fest House on the other. If you were to maybe modify the size of the bumper cars or even remove them, then you could like beef up that pathway. Then it'd be much more obvious that, hey, the park continues this way. Because in its current state, it is not obvious at all. They would also have to retheme the side of the building of Fest House. Because right now it is like all in the front, and when you walk back there, it is clearly the side of a building. It looks terrible. Maybe you put in another entrance there, so you could exit the Fest House then towards this new plaza. That would make sense.
You'd also have to add more rides. Like, you can't just put that back there and then call it done.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So, like, let's say that this is ride number 1 back there. I propose a Starflyer because
they just Mock Tower is.
Yes, however, it is not that necessary to be specifically where Mock Tower is. I would argue that it is more important to put something tall back in this area. And if you specifically look at where the station, this new plaza for this coaster will be, if you fit in something like a Starflyer where you just have a circular pad, there's room. You might not have enough room for another big roller coaster. I mean, maybe. Right here you can see some of the land that they aren't using. So like, if you got creative down the line, maybe you could put a liftle going over part of this ride.
They made it a hell of a lot more complicated.
Oh, absolutely. But a Starflyer, that is totally doable. And then people will see the Starflyer and they'll be like, we got to go ride that. And oh, look, a family coaster.
So we mentioned Drachenfire as the roller coaster that used to occupy this plot of land, and it was very iconic. I don't know that it was well loved. I never got to ride it, but I heard it sucked. However, another ride that is now defunct that used to be where Verbolten is now is Big Bad Wolf. That was an aero suspended coaster. That was very well loved, very well, received by guests.
People still talk about that ride. All these years later, they're like, man, Busch Gardens needs to bring back the wolf.
this could be it.
Yeah.
This could be their way of doing it. I mean, it's a similar, I very loosely say, and you are suspended under the track, yes.
You paint it red and you theme it to some sort of wolf or something, and boom, there you go. People will be like, oh, it's like the reincarnated Big Bad Wolf. People will love it.
Well, one thing, that we learned with Phoenix Rising coming to Busch Gardens Tampa is that it's going to have onboard audio, which they could then do the same thing with this one and make it like some like howling noises and stuff.
Yeah. Which is funny because I always thought that Verbolten paid homage to Big Bad Wolf, but it seems like Busch Gardens Williamsburg is like, well, we can play up on this nostalgia like even more,
They seem to like doing that.
Yeah, it's their 50th anniversary. They're like, let's do something cool here. I mean, Dark Coaster paid homage to Dark Castle. If Busch Gardens Williamsburg tomorrow were to make a post that said, for 2025, we're bringing back Big Bad Wolf, and it's this B&M family invert, I guarantee you the crowds would go nuts, because you have to think, the average person has no idea that aerodynamics is defunct. They don't even know what type of ride it is. They just know that you hang below the track and that it was awesome. The only thing is I just hope that they give it enough of a theming difference that it stands on its own, that it's not so much built up on nostalgia that it's doesn't have its own identity.
I almost worry that it's going to be too plain compared to what Big Bad Wolf was. The thing is, you already in the same park can do a very similar sensation, whereas, an aero suspended reality swinging back and forth like that, that doesn't exist in the park, and it's still not going to, unless we get totally surprised and they're like, oh, actually.
B&M suspended coaster.
But it swings,
No way. The thing that I also think about is the fact that this would have a lower height requirement, which, okay, Busch Gardens Williamsburg already has a decent number of family coasters, but some of them are 48 inches, and I believe that a B&M family invert is 42 inches. So that is nice to see. In terms of layout, it probably won't be anything too extreme. The most interesting part about it is that we will be seeing 2 lift hills, which, again, is something that Big Bad Wolf had. Yeah. So playing up on it even more.
If people are thinking about Big Bad Wolf and then they get on that, they're going to be like, well, it wasn't as good. When something is meant to pay homage to something that beloved, people are more critical of it. Yeah. They just are. I mean, look at, they just opened up everything new at Epcot, and everyone who grew up with Epcot is going to look at it way more critically, because there are parts of it that are like, oh, we're paying homage to something that used to exist.
Yep.
People are like, it's not as good. Whereas if they had no connection whatsoever and they're like, we're doing something totally different, people wouldn't complain as much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, there's an extra level of emotional attachment where you're going to be harder on everything. So if people love Big Bad Wolf and they're like, this is the spiritual successor to Big Bad Wolf, I feel like people are going to be a little more harsh on it. Yeah. Maybe. Or maybe they won't care. I don't know.
It's tough to say. I will say, I mean, the kids who ride this thing are not going to have any idea what Big Bad Wolf was.
No, hell no. The kids are going to be fine.
Yeah,
the kids
aren't going to care.
Which I guess, in reality, they are kind of more the target audience.
And maybe it's about raising up that next generation, that these kids will grow up on whatever ride this ends up being called. And then they will one day bring their kids on it.
The bigger, badder wolf.
I think in conclusion, this is not certainly how I expected things to go. It's just sad thinking about the what if scenario. What could have been. And it would have been dramatically different.
I'm just going to be blunt and say I'm pretty disappointed. And it feels like the SeaWorld Entertainment corporation overall is kind of going with this mentality of quantity. We need to open up something every year at every park, instead of saving up for that big thing, every couple years. And I think that this would have been a good addition if they weren't using this massive plot of land.
SeaWorld Entertainment, I would love for you to prove us wrong and you have actually bigger plans for this area.
I really hope so.
You can put in multiple attractions and still make it work. I tell you what, if you're able to fit 1 or 2 more attractions back there with this space and you can come up with something that's creative enough to work, more power to you. That's awesome. Yeah. But as of what we're seeing on the surface, it's a little disappointing.
I'm bummed out. I am. I would have loved to have sat here and told you guys, oh my God, we're getting a ground up RMC in 2025 in this amazing plot of land. Yeah. And like I said, I'm excited for clearly it's not an issue of the family invert, because I'm very excited for the one at Busch Gardens Tampa. I think it's a great fit.
Yeah.
They need more family coasters. It's replacing a family coaster, but to replace an iconic massive steel coaster with ideas for several different what would have been iconic huge coasters in the same plot of land, to then settle on something small and like, you know, kind of uneventful. Like
that
for
most guests won't even be able to
yeah,
find.
it's a buzzkill. But again, I know the coaster will be fun. I'm not like, you know, upset about that.
Yeah, I think we'll enjoy it
It's
for
just
what
the
it is.
wrong place. Wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
Boom. That's how I feel.
Well, I want to hear from you guys down in the comments below. What do you think of this? Do you agree with the points we brought up? If you think there's anything we missed, and of course, we have to do a huge thanks to the folks at BGW Fans for coming up with this stuff. They're the ones who released the blueprints, all of the stuff that you can read about in an article that they posted. It is super in-depth if you want to learn about like how they're able to deduce that it was a B&M family invert, like look at all the footers and the plans. Really good stuff there. Go show them some love because they put in a lot of hard work to being able to release this to all of us to talk about.
I think I said this in like another video about one of their articles where like I would hire them as PIs.
They're very
I really
good.
would. Like they can figure out anything. It's crazy.
It's impressive. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.